Hello everyone, I did promise you that I will create a screencast on how to create a self and peer assessment. So here it is. Right, to access your module you need to access your modules on the list. So I'll just use this testing site for myself. So I'll just click once in there. So this is where you would access the module in which you want to create your self and peer assessment for. All right, so basically once you've accessed your course, you go click on the contents area, and then what you do is you'll have your build content, your assessments, your tools, and your partner content. So what you need to do is you hover over assessments, and then what you need to do is go select on self and peer assessment. That's where it's sitting. So you click once, and then what it will do, it will ask you, do you want to create a new self assessment, self and peer assessment, or you want to import one? So if you already created one, you can always import that one and tweak it where it needs to be tweaked. So for this example, I'm just using a new we're creating it from scratch. So basically you need to give it a name. In this case, I'll just call it peer assessment example. That's the name. Here you need to actually give instructions as to what is it that you want your students to do and how you want them to do it. So this, everything that's got to do with instructions, you just type it in there. So I'll just call it testing there as well. All right, your submission date, when do you want your students to be able to submit? So immediately in this case, so I'll leave it as 11:23 as it is now 11:24. So I'll leave it as it is. End date. All right, this is where you want your students to be able to submit from this date up until that date. But for this example, I'll make it the same date because I need this assessment to close, and then so that it opens for evaluation, so that I can demonstrate as well as how do students evaluate themselves. So what you need to do is I'll change it to the 14th, same date in this case. But in your case, if you create an assessment, you always give them the duration that's it necessary. So for an example, if they need to submit today is Monday, they need to submit on Friday, or next week Monday, then you give them that date. So I'll say from now up until 11, let's say 11:35. Submission up until 11, let me think, no, let me make it 11:40 to give myself some time as well to submit something. All right, so I have end date on the 14th, today at 11:40. It's open now. All right, and when do you want your students to be able to evaluate the submissions? So this is up to you. Start date, it could be the same date. All right, so I'll make it the same date. All right, at 11:23. all right, what needs to happen here, the start date, the submission date, and the evaluation dates cannot be open at the same time. For an example, the submission date starts at 11:23, started at 11:23, and the evaluation date is 11:23. Should I click on submit, it should give me an error message saying that the evaluation start date must be after submission end date. All right, so this basically means that now these two cannot go parallel or concurrently, so you need to change one. So I'd say the evaluation date needs to start right after the submission date, the submission. So I'll make it 14/11/41, or let me make it 42. All right, so at 11:40 it will close, and 11:42 it will open for evaluation. Okay, and then at up until 11, let me make it 11:45. All right, do you want to allow anonymous evaluation? Do you want the students to see each other's names and surnames and everything else? You say it's up to you, yes or no. Do you want the students to evaluate themselves before they evaluate others, or do you want them to just go straight to evaluating others? That's up to you. You can just say yes or no. Do you want the students, do you want, once a student is done evaluating another student, do you want Blackboard to send the mark allocated to the evaluated student, or do you just want them to, or you just want to make them anonymous, or not to send the email. So you can say yes or no, it's up to you. All right, and then the number of submission to evaluate for each student. How many students do you want one student to evaluate? So if you have 20 students, do you want a student to submit to evaluate one or two students or three students? So it's up to you how you play around that. So I'll leave it as two. Each student can evaluate two students, and including themselves. All right, self evaluation. All right, if you want to restrict any days within your duration, then you can actually choose those dates there if you want to restrict students from submitting. So I'd always say just leave that blank, don't choose anything on that. You don't want any restrictions. And then once you're done, you just click on submission. All right, now that you've created your instructions, what you need to do now is you need to create the questions. So what you can do is you click once on create question, and then on the question, to simplify this example, let's make it about mathematics. So let's say 1 plus 1. All right, and then model response. If you want to actually guide the student who will be evaluating as to what is it that they need to look at when they're evaluating this, you can just model that in there, or else just leave it blank. I suggest that you always just leave it blank. All right, you want to make this question available, you can say yes or no. All right, leave it at yes, and then you click on submit. Basically, you're done with question 1. If you want to have more questions, you can just click on create question again. You go through the same steps. Let's say in this case we want to make it 2 plus 2. All right, 2 plus 2, and then you leave the model response and you click on submit. All right, you have question 2. All right, so let's leave it with 2 questions. You can add as many questions as you like. All right, now once you're done creating questions, what you need to do is for each question, now let's say you have 10 questions, now you must go back to question 1. On the drop down arrow next to question 1, you click once. Now you can go click on criteria. So this is where you select your criteria, more like your rubric. What is it that the students might, the guidelines that you want them to actually look at when they are actually assessing this this question. So you click again on create criteria. All right, so the actual question is what is 1 plus 1. So the answer, the criteria in this case, but now this case, because we're using an example of mathematics, so the criteria will be in a form of a memo. All right, so the actual criteria, the answer is 2. So this is where you'll type in 2. If this was a question whereby you'd say, let's say you've given your students an essay saying that they must do A, B, and C on that essay. So basically what you need to do on the criteria is to ask, the first question is about whether the student does the essay have an introduction, does the essay have a body, does the essay have a conclusion. So if those 3 are available, then you'll just give it a mark. You can make it how many points possible. It can be 1 mark or 3 marks. All right, so the example that I've just made now, if there's an introduction, body, and conclusion, so let's say that's 3 marks. So what you can do is you can also all or nothing. It means that's full mark or nothing, but you can make that partial. By partial, it means that if the student has an introduction and a body but no conclusion, then he gets 2 marks. If he only has an introduction, no body, no conclusion, then he gets 1 mark. So that's what the partial credits are there for. But in this example, whereby we're using a memo as a rubric, so it's all in or nothing. So if a student said sorry, excuse me, if a student says the answer is 3 or 4, then he's wrong, so he won't get the full mark. So let's say mark is up to 2 marks. All right, allow feedback for this, and then you can just say yes or no for this question. Remember, only it says yes or no, but in this case I don't really have feedback, but let's leave it so it's yes, so that I can show you how it looks like. So I click on submit. Remember, I'm creating a criteria only for question 1, so I still need to do other questions. So once I've clicked on submit, it should take me back to my questions, but this one, the criteria that I've created, should already fall under question 1. All right, there you go. So this criteria is for question 1. 1 plus 1 criteria, it's in the form of a memo, it's 2. Then criteria worth 0 to 2 points or 2 points. All right, so it's either 0 or 2 points. There's no partial mark. So I click on OK. So I'm done with question 1. So the reason I'm clicking on OK is for me to go to question 2. It's just that now internet is starting to be slow. It's a pity for you. There you go, something is happening. Oh my goodness, reload. Okay, now you're on question 2. Sorry about that. Now we've created a criteria for question 1. So to create a criteria again for question 2, you go to question 2, you click the drop down arrow next to question 2, you go to criteria. And then you will have to do the same steps which you provided in the on question 1. So you need to type in the actual answer or instructions if it's a form of in the form of a memo. So what I'll do is I'll click on criteria, create criteria for question 2. Sorry, this keeps on happening, it's just the internet. Okay, there you go. So you have question 2, which is 2 plus 2. All right, so what you can do is you can type in whatever you want to type in a form of, it's more like, this is more like a rubric for question 2. All right, so in this case it's a memo, so my memo is 4. All right, if a student types in 3 or 7 or anything else other than 4, then it's 0. So it's all for or nothing. So it's 0 or 2 marks, because I said it's up to 2 marks. Then I click on submit. Now I have created, and then I click on OK. Now I've created my questions, 2 questions, and I've created my criteria for each question. So I can click on OK. So my students, now I've created the self and peer assessment. As you can see, submission from 11:23 started at 11:23 up until 11:40. So I have now literally 3 minutes to submit, and then after that it will only take 2 minutes for me to be able to evaluate. So what I'll need to do now for this example, I need to change to student view, because I'm gonna demonstrate how your students will actually be able to submit. So as a student, what I'll do is I'll come to content. Remember, in this case already as a lecturer, you've created an announcement or a discussion, yes, an announcement, or you send an email that you've created a self and peer assessment on Blackboard, so that the students can come here and access it. So I'm here to view the example, so I'll just click on complete assessment because I'm a student. So in order for me to complete this assessment online, what I'll do is to complete question 1, I'll click on question 1. So my question is, what is 1 plus 1? So my answer there, I'll say 2, and then I scroll down and then I click on next. All right, so also if this was an assignment that requires maybe an attachment, let's say I did a Word document on a different assignment, then I'll have to browse my computer and upload it in there. All right, so but now this is mathematics, so I'll just click on next to go to question 2. Question 2 says, what is 2 plus 2? Let's say my answer is wrong, I'll say 3. All right, so what I'll do is I'll just click on submit. So this means now that I have completed, as you can see, status completed. So as a student, I've completed that, and also I'm on time because the submission date is up until 11:40. All right, so it's only at 11:42. So when I click on OK, as a student, it means that I'm done. So when I click again, if I want to evaluate and I click in there, it will be as if I want to submit, because why? The closing time is at 11:40 and now only the time is at 11:38. So what I'll do is, let me just click on OK. What I'll do is I'll pause this video up until 11:42 so that it opens for evaluations. So I'll just click on pause. All right, welcome back everyone. The time now is 11:42 and the evaluation date started from 11:42 up until 11:45. So basically what's happening here is that once the students are done submitting and you've closed the session, and only then it will be able to open for evaluations. All right, so for those early birds, you need to explain to them that even if, let's say for an example, you open for evaluation next week Monday, so even if someone submits tomorrow or Wednesday, it means that they will have to wait up until next week Monday to actually come back here and view. All right, so basically what you need to do is, let me take it from the top. As a student will log in again after the due date has passed, and then they'll have to go to content, and then they'll have to click again on view or complete assessment. But now only now it will look different, whereby the list of 2 students that you suppose, remember I have 2 peers evaluation as 2. all right, so the list of 2 students will be there. It's just that now this module does not have students, it's only myself as a preview user that is in there, hence you'll only find myself. So let's assume that there's like 2 students in there. So what you do is, for the first student, you click on the student. So the question is, what is 1 plus 1? The submission from a student is, the answer is 2. So in this case, for this student, the memo is 2. So in this case, I'll allocate the marks, the 2 marks allocation. All right, so the student got that one right, so I can have feedback, but because it's right, I don't need to give feedback. I can just click on submit. All right, sorry, before I click on submit, I can just save and go to the next question, to question 2. all right, so again, take it from the top. Question is 1 plus 1. Submission answer is 2. The criteria is that it's 2, so the student got it right in there. All right, so this is criteria 1, so you click on save next. All right, now second question number 2 was 2 plus 2. Student said 3, which is actually wrong. The answer is 4 based on my memo. So now what I can do is, I won't allocate the students. Remember, it's all for or nothing. I won't actually allocate any partial mark, so I'll just give feedback and say, please note. I'll just say, please note, please note that the answer for this question is 4. When I can even go further and say, when you have 2 cars and you buy 2 more, it means that you now have let me just say, you now have 4 cars. All right, so that's why you didn't get a mark. So I click on, now that I've created I've evaluated, now that the student has evaluated all questions, then you can just click on submit. Right, so there you go. Points allocated for this is 2 marks out of 4, so that's the final completion, and then you click on OK. So basically now the student has submitted his assignment and is also evaluated another student. All right, as you can see there that the evaluation will take place from 4:42 up until 4:45. All right, so that's basically how to create self and peer assessment goes, and how do your students evaluate one another. All right, thank you very much. I hope this will be helpful. I'll just quickly exit the preview, and then what I'll do is I can just end the session. Thank you very much. Bye.